The moment my eyes fell on that 19-year-old young servant, I forgot to turn away. For a long time, I simply stood there, staring in stunned silence at the young man whom my husband had just introduced to me as our new domestic help. I couldn't stop looking at him from head to toe. Was he really our new servant? My husband said, "This is our new houseboy. You've been overwhelmed lately with all the chores, so I hired him to help out. Now you won't have to worry about anything. Just train him however you like. Whatever you ask him to do, he'll do it." And with that, my husband went into the bedroom, leaving me alone with the boy, who now stood in front of me with his head bowed and hands folded respectfully. "What's your name?" I asked gently. In an incredibly pleasant voice, he answered that his name was Jamil and that he could handle all household tasks easily. He assured me that he would work with full dedication and would never give me a reason to complain. I took him to the kitchen and gave him a couple of small tasks. I wanted to see if a young man like him could really manage housework properly. To my surprise, he not only cleaned the entire kitchen in minutes, but even started preparing the food. After finishing, he stood before me again, hands folded. "Madam, while the food cooks, shall I clean the rest of the house?" I nodded silently and sat on the couch, watching him as he moved swiftly around the house. There was an efficiency in his hands. He was energetic, quick, and graceful. Before I knew it, he had polished the house until it gleamed like a mirror. Even our previous maid, Nazira, never cleaned this well. Nazira used to work here until she went back to her village for a long break. Since then, all the chores had fallen on me, and maybe that's why, seeing my struggles, my husband decided to hire Jamil. But to be honest, I wasn't paying attention to his work as much as I was drawn to his athletic build. I had never seen such handsomeness and masculine grace in any man before. After cleaning, Jamil went back into the kitchen. I returned to my room. My husband, Farman, was lying in bed resting. He didn't care where I was, what I was doing, or why. He had his own world, and I clearly was not part of it. That's why I was neither happy nor content in my marriage. Whenever I saw other people enjoying their married lives, my heart would sink. Everyone else seemed to be living joyfully, while my life had lost all color and meaning. Why? Because Farman was already married before me. I was his second wife, accepted out of sheer family pressure. Had his parents not forced him, he would never have married me. And the result of this forced marriage was that he never gave me my rightful place. He never looked at me with love. He never acknowledged me beyond a name. It was a relationship of obligation, a burden he was just carrying. Because of that, my life was filled with an aching emptiness so deep, it felt like my heart bled silently every night. After all, I was young, I was beautiful, I had dreams, desires. But all those dreams drowned in tears on our wedding night, when I realized just how little I meant to him. I was his wife in name only. My status was even lower than a stranger's. Within the four walls of this grand house, I felt completely alone. Farman's presence or absence made no difference to me. Sometimes I felt like jumping over the four walls of this house and escaping to somewhere, anywhere. And other times I just wanted to fall at Farman's feet and pour out my heart, beg him for love and attention. But I could do neither. I couldn't run away from the house, and I didn't have the courage to kneel before my husband, lay bare my desires, and plead for affection. Life kept drifting between these emotional highs and lows. Until the day someone entered my life. A presence that suddenly made me feel like I needed to be whole again. He was a 19-year-old boy, our new houseboy, brought in by my husband to help me around the house. But the first time I laid eyes on him, something inside me awakened. He was tall, broad-shouldered, well-built, yet soft-spoken and respectful. He would move around me attentively, speak gently, and care for me in a way no one else ever had. I felt like this was the kind of man I should have spent my life with, but instead, I had been forced into a loveless marriage, a life that was nothing more than the result of others' decisions. Jamil, as he was called, became my breath of fresh air in this suffocating existence. I didn't know where Farman had found him, but Jamil didn't seem like an ordinary servant. The way he carried himself, his refined manners, his clean and organized living space, it all suggested he came from a well-off family. The moment he and I began talking, something started to blossom in my heart. He noticed everything about me, my moods, my routines, even the things I never said aloud. He complimented me, looked after me, remembered my smallest needs, thus, while Farman knew nothing about me at all. Then came that night. A violent storm raged outside, and Farman couldn't return home from the office. I was alone, restless, unsettled. In our 1-year marriage, I had never once felt truly connected to Farman. And that night, that void inside me grew unbearable. I tossed and turned in bed, but sleep was impossible. I got up and wandered around the bungalow, but my unease only deepened. The rain beat down harder, the night grew darker, and I was alone. And then I made a decision that would change the course of my life, a decision born out of loneliness and emotional starvation. Without thinking of the consequences, I walked silently toward the servant quarters. Jamil was the only other person in the house. I knocked on his door. He opened it within moments, surprised to see me, standing there, soaked in the rain. I was young and I knew I was beautiful. He stared at me, speechless. I looked at him from head to toe and stepped into his room. It was a small space, but clean, neat, and decorated with care. Seeing me there at that hour, he looked concerned. "Madame, is everything all right? Has Sir not returned yet?" I shook my head. "No, your Sir hasn't come home. And even if he had, it wouldn't have made a difference to me." There were tears in my eyes, sadness in my voice. Jamil immediately dropped to his knees beside me. "Madam, is something wrong?" he asked, clearly worried. I gave him a faint, sad smile, looked into his eyes, and took his hand in mine. "Jamil, everything could be all right," I whispered, "if you want it to be." He stared at me in shock. I slowly reached into my hand and extended 10,000 rupees toward him. "Take this," I said softly, "and in return, give me happiness." Hearing my words, Jamil was completely stunned. He looked at me with disbelief and confusion in his eyes. Perhaps he couldn't comprehend that I, the lady of the house, had come to his servant quarters in the middle of the night and said something so bold, so unexpected. When I realized he was speechless, even after hearing everything from my heart, I stepped forward myself and rested my head against his chest. The rain outside had intensified. My entire body was drenched, and the scent of Jamil's skin was casting a spell over me. Jamil was a young man too. How long could he restrain himself? I was offering myself to him, and he could see it. Gently, almost hesitantly, he wrapped his arms around my waist and laid me down on the small bed. His lips warmed my forehead, and I closed my eyes to feel the touch of someone who, at that moment, felt like mine. I wanted to forget everything. I wanted to feel whole again, to erase the void that had consumed my heart for months. And Jamil, he was ready to give me that completeness. Not long after, we were both completely... My name is Mer Nisa. Everyone calls me Nisa, which in Arabic means woman. And a woman is a creature of flesh, heart, and deep emotions. I have always been sensitive, especially when it came to relationships and emotional bonds. I was born in a village, raised under a strict, feudal household where silence ruled and freedom was a foreign idea. I was scared of my father, Baba Johnny. I couldn't express myself openly in front of my mother either. I had no real friends. Outsiders were rarely allowed into our Haveli mansion. The servants were considered inferior, kamine, and we were not even allowed to look them in the eye. I had one elder sister, Taj Nisa, and she was the only person in the world I felt truly connected to. She was the one I could tell everything to. When her wedding was arranged, it broke my heart. She was leaving me. Forever. Taj got married into another influential family, the son of a Wadara, landlord, from a nearby village. His name was Farman Elahi, a well-educated businessman from the city. It was a love marriage, and since both families had long-standing ties, no one objected. Farman Pai was kind and loving. He gave Taj so much happiness. They settled in the city, and whenever I had the chance, I would visit them. Coming to the city opened new doors for me. Life in the city was colorful, alive, completely different from the suffocating silence of our village. Taj welcomed me with love. She would take me shopping, to cafes, to parks. Even Farman Pai looked after me like a younger sister. I began to escape from the village more often just to breathe in the freedom the city gave me. Then one day, I heard that Taj was expecting. I was overjoyed. Back in the village, my mother constantly worried about Taj. So one day she said, "Pack your bags, go stay in the city with your sister, stay as long as needed until she gives birth." I had no idea that what awaited me in the city would not just be freedom, but also temptation. That stepping out of one prison would slowly lead me into another, a quieter, darker one, formed not by walls, but by longing. What does a blind person desire most? Eyes. For me, life in the city was already full of vibrant colors and excitement. So, without a second thought, I packed up my belongings and moved to the city for what was supposed to be a stay of 9 months. My sister was delighted to have me around, and Farman Bai, her husband, took exceptional care of me too. Their love, their bond, it made me brim with joy. I would often tease my sister, saying, "I want a husband just like Farman Bai." Little did I know that fate was not preparing someone like Farman for me, it was preparing Farman himself. During childbirth, my sister's condition deteriorated suddenly. My parents came all the way from the village as things grew tense. And then, just like that, she left us. She gave birth to a premature baby girl, and within moments she was gone. The shock was so overwhelming, none of us knew how to breathe under its weight. Never in my darkest dreams had I imagined losing the one person I loved more than anyone in the world, my sister, Tajun Nisa. But fate, once it has written something, never hesitates to unfold it. The tiny, fragile baby was placed in my arms while my sister vanished from this world forever. Farman Pai was devastated, completely broken. His family struggled to pull him back together, and in the following days it was decided, with the consent of all the elders, that I would marry him, for the sake of the baby, for the sake of family honor. Only 10 days after my sister's death, I was married to her husband. For me, calling Farman Pai my husband was something I couldn't bring myself to do. I had never imagined being in such a situation. I had no say in the matter. My father had already made the decision. I wasn't even allowed to object. And just like that, I became the wife of my own sister's widower. The baby girl stayed with me. I named her Fatima, a name of honor and beauty. She was a fragile little soul, a premature baby who had arrived in this world before her time. Her lungs weren't fully developed, and her tiny body struggled with every breath. And then, 1 month after our marriage, Fatima too left us, silently, softly. Her death was another blow that silenced Farman Pai completely. He shut himself in his room for days, mourning not just his daughter, but his wife, his dreams, and his future. I tried to reach him, to console him, but how could I collect the scattered pieces of someone else when I myself was shattered? The house fell into silence. Everyone in the family grieved, but as time passed, they slowly returned to their lives. Farman's parents went back to the village, and now in that huge bungalow, it was just the two of us, Farman and I. Before leaving, my mother took me aside and said gently, "This is your home now. This is your life. You must try to heal Farman with your love." But how could I? Farman didn't acknowledge me as his wife. He couldn't. To him, I was a shadow of Taj. Someone placed in his life by tradition, by obligation, not love. He couldn't give me her place. Nor did I expect it. But he couldn't even look me in the eye. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Even after a year, Farman hadn't accepted our relationship. He remained emotionally frozen. If he had the option, I'm sure he would have sent me back to the village. But we were bound by our traditions, and sending a wife back, especially one from a respected family, would have broken ties between two communities. So I remained. I stayed in that house, in that silence, as someone's wife, but not truly a partner. And though Farman had every legal right to me, I still felt more like his late wife's sister than his spouse. I would remember the times when Taj used to blush just talking about him, how happy she was, how loved. Who cast the evil eye on their relationship, I still wonder. As time passed, my grief for Taj slowly softened. My heart, which had long been numb, began to stir again. I started realizing that if I didn't try to change my circumstances, I'd be trapped in this half-life forever. Farman's heart still beat only for Taj, even after all this time. He could never bring himself to look at me as his own, and I, who had been thrust into this role unwillingly, now began to long for the very love that Taj once had. My heart whispered that perhaps one day I too could be loved like her. Perhaps one day I too would matter. Perhaps he would see me the way he once saw her. I longed for the same attention and affection that Taj Api had once received. But not every destiny is written equally. Despite my countless efforts, Farman never once looked at me with love, not even for a moment. I lacked nothing in this grand house. Everything I could need was available to me, except the companionship of a husband. That, it seemed, was never written in my fate. When our housemaid, Nazira, who belonged to our own village, had to leave suddenly for her daughter's wedding, we couldn't find a replacement right away. So I ended up managing the huge bungalow on my own. Farman was aware that it was too much for me. He understood that I was struggling. So, in haste, he arranged for help, a houseboy named Jamil, who was given a room in the servant quarters. Jamil was quick, efficient, and skilled at his work. But more than that, he won my heart. I had been starved of love and affection since childhood. All my life I had craved emotional warmth, and now, receiving the slightest attention from Jamil, this kind, attentive young man, I found myself drawn to him. And so, on a stormy, rain-drenched night, I abandoned all restraint, all upbringing, all awareness of my position, and found myself at the door of the servant quarters. Jamil was shocked to see me there at such an hour, soaked completely by the rain. But when I poured out all my pain to him, start to finish, he held me gently, stroking my head, comforting me in silence. Moments passed. Slowly, we began to feel something stir between us, a dangerous yet undeniable connection. And just then, a knock sounded on the door. My heart nearly stopped. Who could possibly be knocking at the servant quarters at this hour? Farman was supposed to be out. Jamil and I were the only two in the bungalow. Jamil looked at me nervously and called out, "Who is it?" A voice came from outside, Farman. My legs trembled. The world spun. I wished the ground would open and swallow me whole. What would I tell him? Why was I there at that hour? Before I could stop him, Jamil gave me a conflicted look and opened the door. Farman stood there, completely drenched in rain, looking exhausted and panicked. He stepped inside and looked at me. I stood there frozen, silent, not knowing how to explain what he was witnessing. My mind was racing, my tongue tied, and then he stepped closer. Without a word, he pulled me into his arms. "I was so worried," he whispered. "I searched the entire bungalow for you. I only came this way out of desperation. Thank God I found you." He sounded truly distressed, genuinely relieved. Before I could say anything, Jamil spoke up, trying to protect me. "Madam was scared, sir," he said softly. "She felt afraid being alone. So she came here." Farman looked at me again, this time with a strange softness in his eyes. He wrapped his arm around me and guided me gently back to the bungalow. He took me to our bedroom, helped me sit down on the bed, and began apologizing for coming home so late. "The rain delayed me," he said. "I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner." I kept my head bowed, unable to lift my gaze. Inside, guilt was tearing me apart. How could I look at him? How could I meet the eyes of the man I had almost betrayed? The man I was willing to replace with a servant? Just for a little affection? The shame settled over me like a storm, heavier than the one outside. And all I could do was sit there in silence, drenched in rain, drenched in regret. Farman sat down at my feet and said, "Forgive me, Nisa. I know I've caused you immense pain. I neither gave you your rights nor brought any happiness into your life. But believe me, tonight when I couldn't make it home on time, I was filled with such unbearable restlessness. I can't even explain it. I was terrified knowing you were alone at home. I remembered how scared you get of thunderstorms. Taj once told me that. And ever since I realized that, my heart kept sinking, imagining you alone and afraid. Instead of questioning me or confronting me, he was apologizing. Not once did he ask why I was in the servant quarters or what I was doing there with Jamil. Maybe he trusted me blindly, and I was about to betray that trust. Hearing him apologize like that broke me completely. I burst into tears. My conscience lashed out at me. How could I even think of being with another man while being married to someone like him? When he saw me crying, he held me tightly to his chest and began pleading for forgiveness again. "I know I've wronged you," he said softly, "but I want to make up for all of it. I want to give you a lifetime of happiness." He kissed my forehead, caressed my back with tenderness, and I sank further into a pit of guilt. A part of me wanted to confess my mistake, to come clean before my husband. But deep down, I knew that if I did, I might lose the last thread of respect he had for me. I couldn't bear to fall from his eyes. So I remained silent. That one night changed my life forever. In a few moments, Farman poured all his long-suppressed love upon me. He made me feel complete, something I had never felt before. And as for Jamil, he never uttered a single word, not in front of my husband, not even to me. The very next day, he quietly packed up and left. Masih Nazira had returned from the village after her daughter's wedding, and she resumed her duties. Jamil went back to wherever he had come from, silently, respectfully. He protected my dignity. He never exposed what happened or what could have happened. And I began a beautiful new chapter in my marriage with Farman. But sometimes I still look back, and my heart shudders at the thought of what if. What if Farman hadn't come home that night? What if I had surrendered to temptation? What if something truly irreversible had happened between Jamil and me? I don't think I could have ever lived with myself. Sometimes, in a moment of weakness, we make choices that scar our souls for a lifetime. But by the grace of God, I was saved from committing such a sin. I am endlessly thankful to my Lord for protecting me from myself. And if I could say one thing to anyone reading this, it would be this: learn to master yourself in moments of weakness. Don't let a fleeting feeling make you do something that leaves a permanent regret. Today I am with Farman. We share a calm, beautiful life. The absence of Taj Api is something we still feel deeply. Her loss is a wound that has never truly healed, but we've accepted it as the will of God, and I carry within me her memory, her grace, and the second chance life unexpectedly gave me.